On the day of my peaceful passing, my husband knelt by my bedside, weeping uncontrollably. Rujan, don't go so fast, wait for me. With love in my heart, I closed my eyes, yet as my spirit lingered between worlds, I heard the hatred he had concealed for 50 years. He hated my father for using his future prospects to coerce him, preventing him from bringing his beloved into the household. He hated my generous dowry, which forced every member of the Liang family to live under my influence. But what he hated most was that his beloved married another and, after death, was left to be devoured by wild dogs, while I lived a life of contentment, enjoying wealth and glory to the fullest. After being reborn, I returned to the day our two families arranged the marriage. In front of the entire gathering, I declared, I barely know him, he's in love with the tofu beauty from the west side of town. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel, subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. The moment these words left my lips, the previously harmonious hall fell into complete silence. Liang Wenci, who had been sitting silently beside Madame Liang just moments ago, now stood up and instinctively refuted me. Rujan, what nonsense are you talking about? In my past life, on a beautiful day just like today, Madame Liang had brought Liang Wenci and a matchmaker to our home to discuss marriage. My mother had the maid Mingyu hide me behind a screen to secretly observe him. Listening to the matchmaker's words about how we were a perfect match made in heaven, I secretly blushed with shyness. At that time, I had already fallen for his schemes and believed we were truly compatible, so I lightly tapped the screen 3 times to let my mother know my feelings. Later, when my father returned to the estate and learned of this matter, he specifically summoned Liang Wenci. And the two talked for a long time in the study. I don't know what he said to my father, but in the end, he managed to convince my father to approve this marriage. After that, the two families quickly matched our birth dates and set the wedding date. With a grand dowry stretching for miles, I was married into the Liang family. For the next 50 years, I always believed I was the luckiest woman in the world. My husband was ambitious, rising to the position of Prime Minister. Our 2 children were filial, our marital relationship harmonious, and there were no concubines in the household, until one day, during a family banquet, I suddenly collapsed. I could feel my time was near. Liang Wenci had also grown old. His face streaked with tears as he called out to me by my bedside again and again. Rujan, don't go so fast, wait for me. I smiled and raised my hand to wipe his tears, wanting to tell him that I was dying of old age and that he shouldn't cry. But I could no longer make a sound. In my final moments, I struggled to open my eyes wide to see the face of my beloved one last time, and also to tell him that my life had been fulfilling and smooth, and that I had no regrets even in death, yet I still couldn't speak. The royal physician shook his head under the gaze of my loved ones. My consciousness gradually faded, and all I could hear was their weeping. Later, the crying ceased, and I heard some sounds of people coming and going. Before long, I heard the aged voice of Liang Wenci again, and the hatred he had kept buried in his heart for a full 50 years. He hated my father for using his official career to force him into a promise of lifelong devotion, preventing him from bringing his beloved into the household. I resent that my generous dowry made the entire Liang household live at my mercy, leaving not a single soul in that vast estate with whom he could share his true thoughts. What I resent most is having lived too long, occupying the position of legal wife for 50 years, bathing in wealth and luxury, while his beloved married another and, after death, was wrapped in a straw mat and thrown to the wild dogs in the outskirts. I've endured all these years, and finally, this day has come. You died before me after all. It's just a pity my beloved Huan Niang couldn't witness this day. You snatched me away from Huan Niang's side. Your father forbade me from having other women in the household. Yet the imperial honors and rewards you received from the Liang family should rightfully have been Huan Niang's. Without you, my future would still be bright. It's because of you that I'm constantly constrained by others and have lost my beloved, Lin Rujan. All of this is your fault. It's just as well that you're dead. Once I scatter your ashes, you can go down and atone to Huan Niang. After my death, my spirit followed Liang Wenci. I watched as he put on a show of mourning, then naturally seized the wealth and shops I left behind. Soon his true nature was revealed. Not only did he refuse to place my memorial tablet in the Liang family ancestral hall, he even had an unmarked grave from the outskirts moved into the family burial ground and entered into the clan registry under the title of wife. He told my children that after his death, he wished to be buried with Huan Niang. Only then did I realize Liang Wenci had hidden my ashes, denying me a proper burial. All to threaten my children at this very moment. The sight of my children being humiliated sent overwhelming waves of hatred surging through me. The howling night wind overturned the candlestick, and as I watched Liang Wenci struggling in the sea of flames, my heart swelled with indescribable satisfaction. Just then, faint yet urgent shouts reached my ears. Instinctively turning around, the scene before my eyes abruptly reversed. In the blink of an eye, I was no longer in the burning house, but standing behind the screen on the day the Liang family came to propose marriage. Before I could gather my thoughts, the matchmaker in the hall had already spoken at length and was now waiting for my mother's response. My hands trembled uncontrollably beneath the long sleeves, nails digging into my palms as I forced myself to stay calm. Since I've been given a second chance, I'd like to see just what brilliant future Liang Wenci, a mere illegitimate son of the assistant director of the Ministry of Personnel, could possibly have without me. Emerging from behind the screen, I adopted the dignified posture of a noble lady from my past life and gracefully bowed to everyone present with perfect propriety. Only then did I turn to look at Liang Wenci's pale face and say, "Second young Master Liang, mind your words, we're not yet familiar enough for you to address me by my personal name." Moreover, was I mistaken? The tofu beauty Zhu Huana from West City has been flaunting the Liang family's jade token everywhere, boasting about her mutual affection with the son of the right deputy minister. She's about to marry into a prestigious household as a young madam. I glanced at the side door. Mingyu had already left. I believed it wouldn't be long before news of second young Master Liang's joyous affair with the tofu beauty spread far and wide. In my past life, I only learned after my death that Liang Wenci had once coaxed Zhu Huana into willingly waiting to marry into the Liang family. Later, for the future prospects promised by my father, he abandoned Zhu Huana, leaving her with no choice but to marry someone else. It was clearly his own insatiable greed that led to this, yet in the end, he blamed all the faults on me, leaving me to die without peace. Since that's the case, in this life, I'll make sure to lay everything bare for all to see. Let the world judge who is truly the most despicable. I turned to Lady Liang and congratulated her with a smile. Perhaps Lady Liang hasn't yet heard the joyous news. I've been told that Zhu Huana has a face like a lotus and a figure as slender as a willow. Allow me to congratulate you in advance, Lady Liang. On gaining such a virtuous daughter-in-law, Liang Wenci glared at me with a face ashen with anger, immediately launching into accusations. "Rujan, when did a well-bred lady like you grow the wagging tongue of a marketplace gossip? And to bring such talk before the hall, you know perfectly well that you and I..." Thud. Mother's round fan fell to the ground, the sound cutting Liang Wenci short. Realizing his blunder, he hastily closed his mouth, though his accusatory gaze remained fixed on me. I pretended not to notice. Madame Liang seemed to snap out of her daze and quickly smiled to smooth things over. "Rujan is right, I truly had no knowledge of this matter." She glanced at Liang Wenci, her eyes brimming with schadenfreude. Wence's aunt probably only heard that she was the most outstanding and beautiful noble lady in the capital, and thus became convinced of Miss Lin. "This led me to rashly come to your residence to propose, disturbing you and the young lady. I sincerely apologize." Madame Liang apologized with her words, but the delight on her face was unmistakable. She had initially worried that if Liang Wenci succeeded, his status as the left chancellor's son-in-law would threaten her own son's future prospects. To her surprise, I not only ruthlessly humiliated him but also exposed his secret love affair. Now, not only would the left chancellor's family reject him, but no noble daughter would likely be willing to marry him in the future. Madame Liang insinuated that this entire affair was a scheme orchestrated by Liang Wenci and his birth mother, which made Liang Wenci's expression grow even darker. He bowed wordlessly to my mother, then abruptly tore the sachet from his waist and held it up, declaring, "I have no acquaintance with any Zhu Huana, and as for my relationship with Miss Lin, this sachet serves as proof. I beg you, madam, to judge fairly." Mother glanced at the sachet that was clearly my handiwork and asked, "You made this?" I nodded, then immediately put on an indignant expression and said, "This sachet was indeed made by me, but you traded it for a folding fan at Prince Huai's banquet last month. Now you're using it to slander my reputation. Had I known this was your intention, I'd rather have traded it with someone else than give it to you." As she spoke, she even had someone fetch a folding fan from her room and threw it on the ground, putting on the full act of a young maiden. Stubbornly insisting she had no idea what he meant at the time, these banquets in the capital had long been in the habit of setting prizes for competitions, with contests of all kinds. Coincidentally, at last month's banquet at Prince Huai's residence, the noble ladies competed in embroidery. The one who finished first was so fond of her work, and with a young girl's heart full of secret affections, she hastily submitted an average piece while privately giving the finest one to Liang Wenci. When the young gentleman competed in poetry, Liang Wenci casually handed me the folding fan inscribed with his losing entry, mimicking my words by saying he had specially saved it for me. Looking back now, the poem on it is nothing but nonsense. What a waste of my sachet. Liang Wenci was so angry she scolded me for talking nonsense, whereupon mother immediately set down her fan and turned to say to me, I've told you daily to be cautious in speech and conduct, yet here you are, daring to accept and give anything without discretion. Sooner or later you'll be tainted by those who don't know what's good for them. Having said this, she turned back to the Liang family and said, my deepest apologies. My daughter has been spoiled beyond all reason by her father, brothers, and myself in the inner chambers, to the point she's forgotten such important etiquette, needlessly causing second young master Liang to misunderstand. When the master returns, we will surely punish her severely. As for the rest, Madame Liang understood perfectly. Paying no heed to Liang Wenci's expression, she smiled and made a few promises before leading her entourage away. As they exited the manor gates, I picked up the folding fan from the ground and chased after them. Amidst the bustling crowd before the manor gates, I took aim at Liang Wenci's smug face and precisely hurled the folding fan to strike his cheek. You expect me to marry you for a tattered fan? Have you no sense of your own worth? My voice was loud enough that passers-by paused momentarily before bursting into whispers. Mother suppressed a smile as she apologized, then instructed the family physician to make a house call before finally closing the gates. Once the gates were shut, I threw myself into mother's arms. In my past life, when mother saw me off to marriage, she not only tripled the dowry she'd brought from her own family but also gave me half of the fields and shops under her name. This woman who had maintained perfect composure all her life wept uncontrollably in father's arms. For the next 6 years, I bore 4 children for Liang Wenci. Each time I gave birth, my mother made Liang Wenci swear it would be the last, until the 4th child nearly took my life, while I lay unconscious. My mother sought an audience with the Empress Dowager and obtained the prescription for a sterilizing drug. Sword in hand, she personally watched as Liang Wenci drank every last drop. Afterward, my mother retreated to a monastery to practice asceticism and pray for my recovery. When I finally awoke 8 months later and she rushed to see me, her temples had already turned grey. I only learned about the sterilizing drug in my past life after I died, when Liang Wenci confessed it to my ashes. He said he and Huanyang had once vowed to have 8 children together, but since Huanyang was dead, it fell to me to bear them instead. I never thought that wretched woman wouldn't even let you bear more children. Continuing the family line is your duty. If you can't even endure this little hardship, you're truly useless. Not half as good as Huan Niang. After father resigned and returned to his hometown, mother wrote me many letters. Though I repeatedly asked to visit her in Lingnan, Liang Wenci insisted that as the matriarch of the Liang household now, the family couldn't do without me. By the time my son married and my daughter-in-law could manage household affairs independently, mother had already passed away many years earlier. The last time I saw mother was in her carriage leaving the capital, her hair streaked with white, eyes red and swollen from crying, sighing repeatedly. What will become of my Zhenna when mother is no longer here? Now, everything starts anew. Mother's raven hair has yet to show any silver strands, and her embrace remains as warm as ever. She held me gently, her hand softly patting my back, allowing my tears to soak her clothes as she spoke the same words from our past life. Still crying in mother's arms at this age. What will become of my Zhenna when I'm no longer here, Tilda? I want to say that after mother was gone, I too learned to manage the household, began to worry for my children, and remembering mother's ways and teachings, I became a formidable matriarch in my own right. But more than that, I want to speak of the hardships along the way, how I endured countless slights with my maternal family absent from the capital. I want to tell of helping my husband secure the position as head of the Liang family, only to discover on my deathbed that I'd misplaced my trust, finding no peace even in death. Mother, I was deceived my whole life, yet at death's door I still longed for another chance in the next. The incident at the Lin residence's gate quickly spread throughout the capital. Soon, everyone knew that the second young master Liang had attempted to propose marriage to the legitimate daughter of the left chancellor with nothing but a folding fan, only to be driven away. Soon after, rumors emerged that second young master Liang had been secretly involved with the tofu beauty from the west side of the city, even giving her his family's jade token. Now he had the audacity to come proposing marriage, clearly wanting to keep his simple home-cooked meals while still craving extravagant delicacies. The Liang family returned home and shut their gates tightly. That night, they didn't even hang the lanterns outside their doors. And the entire household was so quiet it seemed deserted. The dispatched guards reported that during the night, Liang Wenci had changed into servant's clothes and crawled out through a dog hole to meet Zhu Huana. Zhu Huana swore up and down that she had never revealed their relationship to anyone. Yet the rumors about the two of them spread with vivid details, and Zhu Huana did indeed possess a jade token from the Liang household. She wore it daily on her belt while setting up her stall. Before, no one had noticed, but now that my people had publicized it, soon the entire capital would know exactly what the Liang family's jade token looked like. Liang Wenci flew into a towering rage. He refused to believe Zhu Huana's words at all. At first, they argued, but as the quarrel escalated, they ended up entangled together. Poor Qingfeng, my guard, had to endure listening to their intimate noises half the night. The very next day, no sooner had Qingfeng finished reporting than a servant delivered a melodramatic letter from Liang Wenci. He begged for time to uncover the source of the rumors, vowing to come to me with a spotless reputation when proposing marriage. As soon as Mingyu finished reading the letter aloud, Qingfeng burst into scornful laughter. Both he and Mingyu had grown up by my side, sharing my every breath. They could always voice the blunt truths that I, as a noble lady, could never openly say. Even the courtesans and male entertainers of Willow Lane couldn't utter such shameless words. Second young master Liang certainly has thick skin. I instructed Mingyu to burn the letter along with all the gifts Liang Wenci had previously sent, then ordered Qingfeng to send those rumor-mongers to stay at the estate outside the city for a while. None were to return without my command. During those days, Liang Wenci couldn't trace the source of the rumors yet dared not visit Zhu Huana too frequently to vent his desires. Worry sprouted blisters on his lips, leaving him listless and haggard. I knew exactly what troubled him, but without my assistance in this lifetime, I was curious to see what schemes he could possibly devise. Liang Wenyu, the eldest legitimate son of the Liang family, entered officialdom 2 years ago as the second-ranked scholar in the imperial examinations. Earning deep trust from the emperor, fresh out of the Hanlin Academy, he was immediately taken by my father to investigate salt taxes in the southern regions. He simply feared that Liang Wenyue's return with achievements would make life increasingly difficult for him and his concubine mother within the Liang household. Thus, Liang Wenci carefully planned each step, hoping to ride the coattails of the Lin family's prospective son-in-law to soar beyond the high walls of the Liang residence. Blessed with handsome features, he spent a year observing me, another half-year cultivating a reputation of ambiguous virtue among our peers, before naturally approaching me with calculated flattery, step by step luring me into his trap. What a pity that at the last moment, I suddenly veered off the path he had planned, catching him completely off guard. I recall the salt tax case has been settled, and now my father is on his way back to the capital. Liang Wenyu has been of great help to my father in Jiangnan, so I've decided to give him a grand gift to ensure his smooth succession to the Liang family. The west side of the city has been quite lively lately. The tofu beauty first got entangled with the second young master of the Liang family, and now she's caught the eye of the wealthy merchant, Squire Liu, who wants to take her in as a concubine. Zhu Huana didn't dare to refuse too harshly after all. The place she's living in and the stall she's running are both rented from Squire Liu's property. She could only hesitantly write a letter to Liang Wenci, begging him to save her. Second young master Liang didn't even glance at it initially. He was too busy investigating the rumors. It was his concubine mother who suggested he seize the opportunity to retrieve the jade pendant. A few days ago, I had Mingyu prepare a carriage in the alley opposite Zhu Huana's house. Precisely for today's little drama, watching Liang Wenci, dressed as a servant, being urgently dragged into the house by Zhu Huana, Qingfeng went to eavesdrop for a quarter hour and returned with a face full of smiles. Just as you predicted, Zhu Huana indeed used an aphrodisiac incense. They barely argued before tumbling into bed together. They're currently embracing and whispering sweet nothings. Miss, should we make our move now? I shook my head. What's the hurry? Wait until they're completely undressed and at the height of passion. That's when the show will be truly entertaining. Half an hour later, a cry of fire pierced the quiet night sky in the western part of the city. The night watchman's clapper roused the neighbors, and men from every household rushed out to help extinguish the flames. Someone realized it was Zhu Huana's house, and the single men fought the fire with even greater enthusiasm. The flames had subsided slightly when two figures came charging out, wrapped in soaking wet blankets, for a moment. All the people still helping to fight the fire stopped what they were doing, staring in shock at the two disheveled individuals whose clothes barely covered them. Then Zhu Huana's scream pierced the air, followed by the sound of approaching hoofbeats in the distance. It was the Liang family, who had discovered their missing young master in the middle of the night, hidden in the darkness by the carriage. I rested my chin on my hand and said with a smile, "Now that everyone's here and the stage is set, it's time to see how the climax plays out." Her gaze fell upon Lady Liang, who had just stepped out of the carriage. The first thing she showed upon seeing the two disheveled figures on the ground was concern. Rushing forward to check if her stepson was injured, Liang Wenxi clung tightly to the quilt to avoid further humiliation. Magistrate Liang stared at the scene before him in shock and fury. He leaped down from the carriage and strode forward, delivering a swift kick to Liang Wenxi. Caught off guard, Liang Wenxi was knocked over, dragging Zhu Huana, still wrapped in the quilt, down with him in an even more disgraceful tangle. The gathered neighbors buzzed with gossip, while lecherous men craned their necks trying to peek through gaps in the quilt. Magistrate Liang, unable to bear the shame, pointed at the pair and stammered, You, before finally ordering servants to carry them into the carriage. He and Lady Liang ended up sitting outside with the coachman instead. The Liang family departed in a grand procession, and only after the fire was nearly extinguished did Qingfeng drive the carriage back to the Lin residence. That night, Qingfeng went to dispose of the carriage. When Mingyu attended to me as I prepared for bed, she asked, "Miss, are you feeling a bit happier now?" I gazed at Mingyu's delicate face and recalled our past life. In the 10th year after I married into the Liang family, I returned her deed of servitude and wanted to arrange a good marriage for her. Yet she insisted on staying by my side and remained there for 50 years. After my death, she was the first to alert my children about Liang Wenxi's issues, and the only one who insisted on bringing me back to the Lin family ancestral graves upon learning Liang Wenxi refused to be buried with me. But by then, Liang Wenxi, freed from my constraints and wielding absolute power, had Mingyu killed under mysterious circumstances with just a flick of his hand, her body discarded in an unmarked mass grave, unclaimed by anyone. As for Qingfeng, he had caught my elder brother's eye years earlier and joined the military camp. By the time of my death, he had risen to the rank of 3rd-grade Gui de General, stationed at the frontier with my brother, never to return to the capital. I am happy. I patted Mingyu's hand and said softly, "With you here, I will always be happy." The crescent moon smiled with curved brows, tucking my hand back under the quilt. "Bright moon will always stay by your side, young miss. You must always stay happy too." Before dawn could break, news spread like wildfire about the Tofu Beauty and second young master Liang's midnight tryst, how their passion had toppled a candle and set the house ablaze. The image of them being carried away by the Liang family, barely clothed, was immortalized in illustrated storybooks for public amusement. Censors worked through the night drafting memorials. At morning court, Minister Liang was impeached for failing to discipline his household, punished with 3 months' salary deduction and half a month of house arrest. During that time, even the physicians visiting the Liang family had to enter through the side gate, with the main gate tightly shut and the lanterns on the outer walls no longer hung. In less than half a month, the team investigating the salt tax returned. What they brought back, besides corrupt officials, were gold, silver, and treasures to be confiscated for the national treasury. With the treasury now full, the emperor was greatly pleased. Qingfeng announced that the confinement of Lord Liang had ended, and the Liang family's main gate was opened once more, joyously welcoming back their legitimate heir. The flood of imperial rewards arrived home before my father did. The accompanying guards said he had handpicked everything along the journey back, all items my mother and I would adore. When the emperor asked what rewards he desired, my father recited his requests as if reading from a script. Soon after, my father burst through the door in his usual whirlwind manner, his first words ringing out, "My dear Rujan, did the gifts please you?" Mother chided him for his brashness in being so selective with imperial favors, but father just laughed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders as they walked toward the main hall, saying, "Don't miss this opportunity, madam. You wouldn't believe it, those old foxes' private treasuries are like hidden treasure caves. Rujan, hurry up, I'll tell you all about this trip to Jiangnan." Gazing at my father whom I hadn't seen in decades, I suppressed the tears welling up inside and quickened my steps to follow him. That night, my father summoned me to his study, on his way home from the palace. He'd already heard from the old servants about recent events in the capital, naturally including the matters concerning Liang Wenxi and Zhu Huana. He placed a letter before me, This was given to me by the eldest son of the Liang family. He contributed greatly during our time in Jiangnan. I can tell he's someone capable of shouldering responsibilities. Before returning, I had intended for you to get acquainted with him, but seeing the state of his family now, as your father, I'm no longer certain. Ruzhen, what do you think? I looked at the letter before me, its envelope bearing bold, vigorous handwriting that read, to Lin Ruzhen, to be opened personally. In his previous life, Liang Wenyu paid little attention to household affairs and rarely returned home due to official duties, so our interactions were limited. At the time, Liang Wenzi was thriving in his official career, and as the legitimate heir, Liang Wenyu seemed naturally opposed to him. Eventually, he was impeached by a group of censors seeking to curry favor with Liang Wenzi and was demoted to serve as a county magistrate in Jinyang for the rest of his life. From then on, Madame Liang never recovered her spirits, and the authority over the household fell into my hands. With Liang Wenyue's decline, Liang Wenzi naturally became the head of the Liang family. Now, in this new life, without my support and lacking the means to contend with Madame Liang's faction, Liang Wenzi has lost his advantage. I've cleared the obstacles for Liang Wenyue's future path, but I have no interest in stepping back into the Liang household again. Sitting beside my father, I propped my chin with one hand and picked up the letter with the other, holding it over the candle flame. With feigned annoyance, I complained. Father knows perfectly well how turbulent the Liang family's inner household is, yet still wants his daughter to walk into danger. Does he find me too bothersome at home? Father took the burning letter and tossed it into the bronze basin prepared by the servant. We watched in silence as the letter turned to ashes before he finally spoke. If that's what you wish, you may marry as you please. Your father will pave the way for you. My precious Ruzhen shall not suffer the slightest hardship. Tears welled up in my eyes instantly. In my previous life, before my wedding, my father took me to dig up 3 jars of Enyue Hong wine buried in the yard to add to my dowry, saying the same words as now, marry with peace of mind. My child, your father has paved the way for you. My Ruzhen won't suffer the slightest hardship. Before leaving the study, I asked my father what if I misjudged the person and ended up suffering. Father smiled and said, what suffering? It's merely the final sweetness from your opponent. Half a month later, Liang Wenzi and Zhu Huana got engaged. Liang Wenyao personally came to my house to deliver the invitation. He looked much younger than I remembered, with striking eyebrows and starry eyes, extraordinarily handsome. Does Miss Lin refuse to see me because of my second brother? His tone was confident. Before I could think of how to respond, his next words nearly made me tear up the invitation. I should have just killed him outright, instead of letting him ruin my marriage prospects. According to Great Cheese laws, those who harm their own kin shall receive 30 strokes of the rod. I reflexively replied, Magistrate Liang, with your promising career ahead, you shouldn't do anything foolish. He stared at me, clearly puzzled by my reaction. He deceived you. I thought you'd want him dead too, rather than letting him die a quick death. I prefer watching him exhaust all his schemes only to end up with nothing, barely clinging to life in the end. This time it was Liang Wenyue's turn to fall silent. After a long pause, he nodded woodenly and said, I understand. Then he turned and left. I'm not sure how much he understood, but not long after, I heard there were complications in Liang Wenzi and Zhu Huana's marriage arrangements. The physician discovered Zhu Huana's health was severely compromised. Suspecting she had previously lost a child, eventually, after thorough investigations, the Liang family actually tracked down a wandering physician who had prescribed abortifacient medicine to Zhu Huana 2 years prior. Second brother claims he didn't know Zhu Huana 2 years ago, so the child couldn't have been his. Zhu Huana was no longer a virgin. During their first intimate encounter, she deliberately chose a time when she was menstruating. You're so uncouth. No wonder your health hasn't recovered in 2 years, I casually retorted, then glanced back at Liang Wenyu who was following me with unruffled composure. You're not much better yourself, discussing your brother's private bedroom matters with an unmarried woman on the street. Aren't you afraid I'll report you for public indecency? Liang Wenyu curled his lip and changed the subject with an air of indifference. You're absolutely right. Watching his misfortune is far more entertaining than simply killing him. Liang Wenzi sent me numerous sour letters and trinkets. I collected them for some time before having them all returned together. Somehow Liang Wenyao got wind of this. He intercepted the delivery from the servant, found a crate to carry everything conspicuously through the streets, and whenever someone asked, he'd declare, my bastard brother keeps sending gifts to Miss Lin, harassing her to the point of distress. I'm just returning them for proper disposal. The next day, when father returned from court, He told me that Minister Liang had been impeached again by the censors, accused of improper conduct, betrothed yet still courting noble maidens who had yet to be married off. Minister Liang stormed off after court, likely to reprimand Liang Wenci. Sure enough, the Liang household shut its doors for several days, and soon after, news spread that Liang Wenci's wedding date had been moved up. It was abruptly brought forward from next June to right after this year's autumn imperial examinations. Liang Wenci's thieving heart remained undeterred. Before the autumn examinations, he even sent someone to deliver a message to me, saying, "If I can take the top spot when the autumn exam results are announced, Ruzhen, can we start over?" I didn't reply. Instead, I simply took Qingfeng and Mingyu to Lingyan Temple for spiritual retreat, telling others it was to pray for my brother who was suppressing rebellion at the border. As for how others interpreted it, that was none of my concern. I stayed there until the day before the autumn exam results were announced before returning to the Lin family. The emperor had informed father of the great victory at the border. My brother was already on his way back to the capital with the triumphant army. The good news will be announced tomorrow along with the autumn examination results. Ruzhen can go join in the excitement. I obediently agreed, and when I exchanged glances with my father, both our eyes clearly spelled out the word stirring up trouble. The next day when the results were posted, I took Mingyu to see the commotion at the imperial announcement board. Just as I stepped out of the carriage, someone shouted loudly, "Second young Master Liang is this year's top scholar in the metropolitan examination." The crowd buzzed with excitement as they gathered around Liang Wenci and Zhu Huana to offer congratulations. After enduring such a tarnished reputation in the capital for so long, Liang Wenci finally had his moment to hold his head high today. Zhu Huana, however, showed no joy at the prospect of becoming an imperial scholar's wife. She merely forced a smile while clutching her handkerchief, her eyes darting restlessly about. It wasn't until I approached that both of them noticed me simultaneously. The joy on Liang Wenci's face was unmistakable, and the others around him noticed me too, naturally making way for us. Liang Wenci took a step toward me, then hesitated as if remembering something, ultimately staying in place, perhaps waiting for me to step forward first to offer congratulations. I heard Mingyu beside me snort coldly, while Qingfeng had already pushed his way to the imperial announcement board. Just as I lifted my foot to move, Zhu Huana rushed ahead and threw herself to her knees before me. "Miss Lin, I beg you to show mercy. Grant this humble woman a way to survive." Everyone present was stunned by this sudden kneeling, so much so that no one even thought to help her up. "Miss Lin, you may be a noble lady, but I too am a woman of good family. Everyone in the capital knows of my relationship with Xilang. Why must you insist on competing with me?" The crowd of onlookers grew larger. Whispering among themselves, Liang Wenci quickly stepped forward, reaching out to pull Zhu Huana up while scolding. "What nonsense are you up to again? Shameful, get out of here." Zhu Huana was as slippery as soft mud, appearing fragile and boneless, yet impossible to drag away no matter how hard one tried. "You say I'm here today to compete with you for second young Master Liang. Where's your proof?" I looked at Zhu Huana, who was crying like a rain-soaked pear blossom, and asked knowingly. I watched with my own eyes as Zhu Huana fumbled to pull a letter from her bosom, raising it high and declaring loudly, "Here I have a letter from Xilang to you, clearly written in black and white that he wants to start anew with you. Miss Lin, dare you deny that this isn't what you had in mind today? Dare I?" I lifted my chin, my smile radiant. "You said it yourself, the letter was written by Liang Wenci to me. This young lady hasn't written a single word in reply and had it returned untouched to the Liang residents. Who would have thought you'd intercept it and now slander my reputation with baseless accusations? Miss Zhu, you keep demanding that I give you a way out, but this is clearly our first meeting. I have absolutely no connection with your beloved Xilang. What way out could there possibly be?" Liang Wenci stared at me in disbelief, while Zhu Huana was also stunned by my words. Stammering after a long pause, speaking so righteously, "Yet here you are," I gave Qingfeng, who was waiting in the distance, a look, and he immediately understood, shouting loudly, "Miss, good news, a great victory at the border. The young master will return to the capital soon." Most people in the capital had heard about the Lin family's legitimate daughter practicing asceticism to pray for her brother's well-being. They assumed I had come specifically to confirm the rumors. Not out of jealousy as Zhu Huana had claimed. In an instant, the crowd's gazes toward Liang Wenci and Zhu Huana turned peculiar. I shifted my gaze back to their wonderfully expressive faces and said unhurriedly, "Second young Master Liang is already betrothed. In the future, you ought to exercise more restraint in your words and deeds. If this matter reaches the court, It will only bring trouble to both Master Liang's, though Miss Zhu comes from humble origins. She is still a respectable maiden, since you've taken her, virtue, naturally you must give her a proper resolution, only then will you not have wasted all these years studying the classics of sages. I deliberately emphasized the words innocence with heavy sarcasm, causing the expressions of those present to shift, some mocking, some jeering, all directed at their faces, making for a thoroughly satisfying sight. Liang Wenci, who had just begun to hold his head high after passing the imperial examination, now found himself humiliated once more. He violently shook off Zhu Huana, pointed at me and stammered, you, for what felt like an eternity without managing to articulate anything coherent. Before finally storming off in a huff, Zhu Huana scrambled to her feet and chased after him, only to be kicked down again as she tried to board the carriage, leaving her to stumble along pathetically behind it. After basking in the crowd's flattery for a while longer, I returned to my residence. The moment I reached the gate, a servant informed me that Liang Wenyao was waiting for me in the garden. Liang Wenyu must have come straight after the morning court session, still dressed in his vermilion official robes. His first words to me were, "I thought you were truly going to start over with him." His tone carried a hint of aggrieved accusation that left me utterly bewildered. I couldn't understand why he thought I would forgive Liang Wenci, nor why he felt wronged, not wanting to be unjustly accused. I spoke my mind directly. Upon hearing this, Liang Wenyu was taken aback. "I thought you already knew I'm not like my younger brother," he muttered to himself. I nodded and said bluntly, "Lord Liang and second young Master Liang are indeed different. Whether in terms of lineage, appearance, or talent and knowledge, Lord Liang surpasses him. Given time, he will undoubtedly become a pillar of the state. The reason you're interested in me is twofold. First, my family background can help you rise swiftly in your career, and second, we share a mutual dislike for Liang Wenci. But that doesn't mean I have to like you. Moreover, as far as I know, Lord Liang already has 2 concubines in his household, and under Madame Liang's arrangements, he's met with several noble daughters. I'm not your only option, am I?" Liang Wenyao was left speechless. After a long pause, he finally replied, "As long as you agree, I'll have mother decline the proposals from other noble families, and the concubines will be sent away immediately. They won't be in your sight." I shook my head and looked up at him. "I don't demand vows of eternal devotion or exclusivity from anyone. After all, most promises are like empty words, spoken but never truly meant. I'm only saying this to make it clear, I don't care for men like you. And you feel no genuine affection for me either. I'm merely the best choice among noble ladies. But even without me, it wouldn't stop you from marrying another girl or seeking pleasure with other women. You just need an ally who shares your heart. It's best if it's me. But if not, that's fine too." My words were blunt, leaving Liang Wenyu with no room for rebuttal. He could only take his leave in haste. I instructed the gatekeeper not to casually admit visitors in the future. From now on, both my father and brother would be key ministers of state, so we must exercise greater caution in our dealings with others. Before long, Liang Wenci was pressured into marrying Zhu Huana. Since Zhu Huana had been living with the Liang family, the so-called wedding procession was merely a short walk from the side gate to the main entrance. There was neither bride price nor dowry, and few guests attended. The wedding was simple and hastily arranged, with even the red silk lanterns taken down after just one night. Not long after, rumors spread that due to Zhu Huana's poor health and inability to bear children, several concubines were brought in through the side gate, turning the second young Master Liang's courtyard into a daily scene of chaos. Liang Wenci had to study for the upcoming imperial examination while also spending nights in different chambers. Listening to endless complaints, his exhaustion became visibly apparent. Liang Wenyao came to see me a few more times, but each time the gatekeeper turned him away. Eventually, he stopped coming. Before long, his own marriage was settled to the eldest daughter of the vice minister of the secretariat. With the wedding scheduled for early spring the following year, the invitation was personally delivered by Liang Wenyu, who politely and sincerely said, "My previous actions were self-willed and selfish, thoughtlessly offending you, miss. I sincerely apologize. I accepted the invitation, considering the past matter settled. Before the New Year festival, my elder brother Lin Fenggu returned to the capital, just like in my past life. My brother's victory in this battle secured 20 years of peace along the frontier, greatly pleasing the emperor, who naturally rewarded him with noble titles and high ministerial positions in my past life. To further Liang Wenci's political career and to give me more standing in my marital family, my brother declined the noble title. However, By retaining the military tally and remaining stationed at the frontier, he inadvertently aroused the emperor's suspicion. Now, free from such concerns, my brother peacefully surrendered the military tally, accepted an honorary position as Marquis of Wuhan, and stayed in the capital to reunite with our family. My life returned to complete tranquility. And all the past entanglements with the Liang family felt like a nightmare. Upon waking, I was still the 16-year-old Lin Ruzhen. During the palace examination the following year, my brother was on duty at the palace. When he returned, he couldn't wait to tell me about the major incident that had occurred during the examination. Liang Wenxi, likely worn out by the beautiful women in his household, appeared listless and unsteady on his feet. He managed to scrape through the first 2 tests on classical texts and poetry composition, but when it came to the policy questions, he often drifted off mid-sentence or gave answers that were completely off the mark, leaving the examiners frowning. During the metropolitan examination, the emperor had a sudden whim to personally test this Liang family's illegitimate son. Not only did Liang Wenxi stutter in his speech, but he even forgot the questions halfway through answering them. Nervous as he was, he broke into a cold sweat in the April weather. After standing before the emperor for the time it takes an incense stick to burn, he looked as if he'd been fished out of water. This so infuriated the emperor that his face darkened, making Liang Wenxi the only tribute scholar in the history of the Qi dynasty's imperial examinations to fail after reaching the palace examination. When they escorted him out, his unsteady steps caused him to trip over the threshold of the Hall of Supreme Harmony, and he immediately fainted. Upon waking, he had lost his mind, insisting he was the top scholar in the imperial examinations, that his wife was the legitimate daughter of the Lin family, and that he would one day rise to the highest ranks of the court. Hearing this, a sense of foreboding crept into my heart. Sure enough, within days, Liang Wenxi, now completely deranged, rushed to the gates of the Lin residence demanding to see me. This isn't right, Ruzhen, come out, tell them, you're my rightful wife, I'm the newly crowned top scholar. I hid in the inner room, listening to Mingyu relay the words to me, confirming that Liang Wenxi had also been reborn. Only the timing of his rebirth was unfortunate for him. He had already been barred from examinations for misconduct before the emperor, making official career impossible in this life. When the Liang family rushed over, I finally appeared before Liang Wenxi. He looked at me and suddenly burst into loud sobs. Ruzhen, wrong, all of this is wrong. I did not respond. Madame Liang led Zhu Huana in bowing respectfully to offer apologies before me, yet I merely watched silently as the Liang family dragged him onto the carriage. Only after the carriage door was locked did I turn to look at them, speaking with pointed meaning. Today the Marquis's residence is hosting a banquet, and there will be no shortage of distinguished guests. Had I not delayed for a while, you 2 ladies would now be fishing your people out from the hands of the Marquis's guards. Since you're ill, you should rest properly at home. The honor of bringing glory to our family must be left to the 2 great officials in the court. Madame Liang repeatedly agreed, and before long, news came that the second young master of the Liang family had fallen ill in the middle of the night, tumbled into a dry well, and broken his leg, leaving him permanently disabled. According to the servants, the second young master had drunk heavily that night, muttering about newlyweds and wedding candles, and wandered into the abandoned courtyard with a wine cup in hand. By the time the servants found him, it was already too late. As for why the long-locked abandoned courtyard had suddenly opened its gate that day, no one cared to find out anymore. The end.